Sarah had learned a long time ago that the worst kind of cruelty never raised its voice. It arrived in small, deniable packages. A comment about her dress wrapped in a compliment. A story about her college years told at the dinner table with just enough warmth to sound harmless. A photo sent to the wrong person at exactly the right time. She was 29 years old, a senior architect with her name on 3 buildings in the city skyline. And she still flinched, sometimes, at the sound of her stepmother clearing her throat before a sentence. "Sarah, darling," Diane said now, swirling her wine glass at the head of the table, "I only mention it because I love you. Mark's mother asked me the sweetest question at brunch. She wanted to know if it was true you'd had some kind of a wild phase in your 20s. I told her, of course not, don't be silly. But you know how these things get started." Sarah set her fork down carefully. "No," she said, "I don't know how these things get started. Why don't you tell me?" Diane's smile didn't move. It never moved. That was the thing about her. The smile stayed exactly where it was regardless of what came out beneath it. "I'm sure it's nothing. People talk." Across the table, Monica said nothing, which was its own kind of statement. She kept her eyes on her plate, cutting her chicken into smaller and smaller pieces, the corner of her mouth doing something that wasn't quite a smirk. Monica was 26, blonde in a way that cost money, and she had spent the better part of a decade positioned exactly one step behind Sarah. Same schools, same city now unbearably, the same social circle that orbited Mark's family. Sarah had stopped trying to name what Monica felt for her years ago. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. Jealousy implied wanting something you didn't have. This was closer to a debt Monica believed Sarah owed her, for a childhood neither of them had chosen, for a father who had remarried and somehow made Sarah the accidental winner of an inheritance no one had asked her to compete for. "It's not nothing," Sarah said quietly. "Someone told Mark's mother a story about me, a false one, and you know exactly who." "Sarah," Diane's voice dropped into the register she used for wounded innocence. "I would never." Later in the car, Mark reached over and took her hand off her lap without looking away from the road. He had a way of doing that, reading the tension in her shoulders before she said a word. "You're doing the thing," he said. "What thing?" "The thing where you go quiet because you've decided it's easier than making me choose between you and my future in-laws not hating me. I'm not asking you to choose. I know that's what worries me." He glanced at her at the red light. Mark had the kind of face that made boardrooms go still, not handsome in an ornamental way, but solid, unhurried. A man who had built a shipping logistics company from a single warehouse and had never once raised his voice to get what he wanted. "Whatever they're telling my mother, I don't believe it. I want you to hear me say that. I don't believe a word." "They'll keep going," Sarah said. "That's what you should hear me say. They've been doing this for years. Small things, deniable things. You can't fight smoke, Mark. You just breathe it until you can't breathe anything else." He didn't answer right away. The light turned green. "Then we stop breathing it," he said finally. "We do something about it." She almost laughed. "Like what?" "Diane will deny everything to your face and cry doing it. Monica will play the victim. That's the whole design. There's no version of confronting them where I come out looking like anything other than the paranoid stepdaughter." "I didn't say confront them." Mark's jaw tightened just slightly, the only outward sign that something in him had shifted gears. "I said we do something." The anonymous email arrived at Mark's mother's inbox 9 days later. It was well written. That was the detail that unsettled Sarah most when Mark's mother, Alina, forwarded it to him with a single line. "I don't believe this, but I thought you should see what people are saying." The email cited a supposed source, an old college roommate, someone who claimed Sarah had a pattern of manipulating wealthy men and discarding them once the money ran dry. There were details specific enough to feel almost credible: a fabricated ex-boyfriend's name, a fabricated breakup, fabricated tears at a fabricated dinner. None of it had ever happened. Sarah read it twice, sitting very still at her kitchen table, feeling something in her chest go cold and precise. "It's her," she said. "It has her fingerprints all over it. The phrasing, she writes like this. She thinks it makes her sound educated." "You can't know that for certain," Mark said, though his voice suggested he already agreed. "I can know it in the way you know your own mother's handwriting even when she types it," Sarah said. Mark, I've watched her do this since I was 15. Not this exact thing she's escalating, but this exact patient cruelty. She never leaves fingerprints, that's the whole talent. Mark read the email again on his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen, and something settled into his expression that Sarah hadn't seen before. Not anger, not yet, but the beginning of a calculation. Okay, he said. Then we stop trying to prove a negative, we start collecting a positive. Meaning, I know a man who installs residential security systems for a living. Cameras that don't look like cameras. Audio that survives in a locked cloud account nobody but us can touch. He looked up at her. If they're going to keep doing this in the dark, Sarah, I want a light on. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't realized had been clenched for years. The particular relief of being believed without having to bleed for it first. Monica's move, when it came, arrived with the confidence of someone who had never once been caught. Sarah was in Chicago for 4 days on a client site visit, non-refundable flights, a hotel booked months in advance, a project too important to reschedule. She mentioned it carelessly at a family dinner 2 weeks prior, the way you mention weather. She didn't think anything of it. She had stopped thinking anything of casual details around her stepfamily only because she'd forgotten, temporarily, that nothing she said around them was ever truly casual. Monica texted Mark the second night Sarah was gone. Hey, I know this is weird, but I wanted to talk to you about something, Ray. Sarah, in person. Can I come by? Just us? I don't want her to feel ambushed later. I just think you deserve context before the wedding. Mark showed Sarah the message over video call, his expression unreadable. She's coming over tonight, he said. Should I say no? Sarah looked at him for a long moment, feeling the particular vertigo of watching a trap assemble itself in real time and having to decide whether to let it close. No, she said slowly, let her come. But Mark, whatever she brings, whatever she says, whatever she pours, don't drink anything she hands you. Not water, not wine. Nothing that's touched her hands before it touches yours. You think she'd? I think, Sarah said, that Monica has spent 6 years watching every romantic comedy where the other woman wins, and I think tonight she's decided she's the heroine of one. Mark's face went very still. At 8:47 that evening, the hallway camera outside their apartment recorded Monica arriving alone, wearing a dress Sarah recognized from a boutique too expensive for Monica's actual salary. Carrying a bottle of wine she claimed was just something small, don't worry about it. The living room camera, tucked into the bookshelf beside a stack of Mark's business journals, recorded everything that came after. The wine poured into 2 glasses at the kitchen counter. Monica's back turned just slightly, just long enough, toward the counter where his glass sat. Mark did not drink it. He held the glass through 45 minutes of Monica's increasingly strange, increasingly rehearsed monologue about how Sarah had changed, about how he deserved someone who understood his world, about a version of Sarah that existed nowhere except in Monica's careful architecture of lies. And when Monica excused herself to the bathroom, he poured both glasses down the kitchen sink and refilled them from a bottle he'd opened himself. She never noticed the switch. She left at 10:15, having accomplished nothing except handing them, unknowingly, 45 minutes of recorded audio in which she referred to Sarah as an obstacle, described her own sabotage campaign against Sarah's engagement in explicit, damning detail, and actually laughed, at the idea that Sarah would never even know it was me. Sarah landed back in the city 3 days later, tired, unaware, wheeling her suitcase through arrivals toward Mark's car at the curb. She noticed it the moment she got in, something new in the set of his jaw, something careful in the way he leaned over to kiss her hello, like a man holding something enormous very gently so it wouldn't spill. How was Chicago? He asked. Fine, she said, studying him. How was your week? He was quiet for a moment, both hands on the wheel, eyes on the road ahead. Educational, he said. He didn't show her right away. He waited until they were home, until her suitcase sat forgotten by the door and the takeout containers had gone cold on the counter, until the apartment had settled into the particular silence that meant no one else could hear them. Then he sat her down on the couch, opened his laptop and said, I need you to watch something, and I need you to know before you watch it that I'm okay. Nothing happened to me, but something almost did. Sarah watched her stepsister pour wine into 2 glasses, watched Monica's shoulders angle just slightly toward the counter where Mark's glass sat alone for 4 seconds, 4 seconds that contained, Sarah would later think, the entire architecture of Monica's character. Watched her turn back around smiling, handing him the glass with the easy warmth of someone doing nothing wrong at all. Sarah's hands were very cold by the time the video ended. She drugged it, she said. It wasn't a question. She'd seen the small white tablet dissolve, watched it vanish into the wine like it had never existed. She tried to, Mark said. I didn't drink it. How did you know? You told me not to. He said it simply, like it required no further explanation, and something in Sarah's chest cracked open in a way that had nothing to do with anger. Nobody in her life had ever simply believed her on the first ask, without evidence, without a trial period. Mark had done it because she'd said it, and that fact alone undid something in her she hadn't realized was still braced. He played the audio next. Monica's voice, unguarded, giddy with what she believed was a private victory. God, she has no idea. She's going to come home and everything's just going to feel a little off and she's going to think it's her. That's the best part. She'll think it's her. Sarah sat with that sentence for a long time after the audio stopped. She wanted me to doubt myself, she finally said. Not just lose you, she wanted the confusion. She's done that my whole life, made things go wrong and then stood back and watched me try to figure out what I did. Not anymore, Mark said. They didn't call anyone that week. They didn't confront Diane, didn't send Monica a furious text, didn't do any of the things that would have felt in the moment like relief. Sarah understood with a clarity that surprised her that relief was not the same thing as justice, and that the family who had spent a decade perfecting deniability would simply produce more of it the second they sensed a threat. If we go to them now, she said, turning the idea over slowly, testing its edges. They cry, they deny, your mother doesn't know who to believe, and Monica tells everyone I'm hysterical and paranoid. We hand them the narrative back. So what do we do instead? We let them think it's working. Mark looked at her, really looked, the way he did when a business proposal shifted from good to dangerous. You want to bait them. I want them comfortable, Sarah said. Comfortable people get careless. Comfortable people say things out loud. Over the following 6 weeks, the surveillance kept working quietly in the background of their lives. A second set of eyes neither Diane nor Monica knew existed. Mark's contact, a former intelligence contractor turned residential security consultant named Terrence, a man who spoke in complete unhurried sentences and never asked why, had built the system with redundancy Sarah hadn't fully appreciated until she saw the cloud folder growing. Encrypted backups, timestamps that couldn't be altered, audio synced to video down to the frame. Diane, unaware, kept talking. She talked at a lunch with Alina, Mark's mother, dropping another carefully worded rumor about Sarah's difficult relationship with money. A lunch Sarah only knew about because Alina, increasingly uneasy about the pattern of these conversations, mentioned it to Mark afterward with a note of genuine confusion in her voice. I don't know why she keeps telling me things about Sarah, Mark. It's starting to feel less like concern and more like a campaign. That single sentence told Sarah everything she needed to know about how close the truth already was to breaking the surface on its own, and how much better it would land delivered whole than in scattered pieces that Diane could still spin. Monica, for her part, texted Mark twice more in the following month, each message wrapped in the same performance of reluctant concern, each one fishing gently for signs that her attempt had worked, that some seed of doubt about Sarah had taken root. Mark answered exactly as much as necessary to keep her convinced nothing had gone wrong, warm enough to not arouse suspicion, vague enough to give away nothing. Sarah watched him do it and felt something she hadn't expected to feel toward the situation at all, a strange, quiet awe. Mark was not a naturally deceptive man. She'd watched him lose a 6-figure contract once rather than let a client believe something about his company that wasn't true. Watching him build this, patient, precise, entirely for her, was its own kind of proof. You're good at this, she told him one night, half joking, half not. I'm not good at this, he said. I'm good at protecting things I care about, there's a difference. The idea for the gala came from Diane herself, in a roundabout way that Sarah found almost funny in retrospect. At a strained family dinner in early spring, the kind Sarah now attended with the detached alertness of someone conducting fieldwork rather than eating a meal, Diane made an offhand comment about how, A proper engagement celebration would go a long way toward reassuring people about the marriage. She meant Sarah understood immediately that a public event would give her and Monica a wider stage, more witnesses, more opportunities to plant doubt in front of an audience larger than a single set of in-laws. Sarah smiled and said she'd think about it. That night she brought it to Mark. She wants a bigger stage, she said, so let's give her one. Mark's eyes narrowed slightly, following the logic before she finished laying it out. You want to have the gala. I want to have the gala, Sarah confirmed. Everyone we know, everyone they know, your family's business partners, my colleagues, the people whose opinions Diane has spent years trying to poison against me, all of them in one room at the same time. And then we let the room see exactly what they've been doing. Sarah's voice had gone very calm, very level, the voice she used at the end of a difficult project when the plan had finally clicked into place. Not a whisper campaign back, not accusations they can deny. Proof on a screen in front of everyone who matters to both of us at once. No spin, no second chances to explain it away. Mark exhaled slowly. You understand there's no walking that back once it's done. Once we do this, it's done. There's no quiet peace with your stepfamily after this, no holiday dinners, no pretending. There was never going to be, Sarah said quietly. I just spent a long time hoping otherwise. I'm done hoping. They set the date for 8 weeks out, enough time to secure the venue. A glass-walled ballroom downtown with a skyline view Mark's family had used for corporate events before. Enough time to build the technical requirements into the evening's design without anyone questioning why the production team was so particular about screen placement and audio routing. Terrence handled the technical side personally, embedding the footage into a segment disguised. On the run sheet, everyone but Sarah and Mark would see as an engagement tribute video. The invitations went out 3 weeks later, heavy cream cardstock, engraved gold lettering, an evening explicitly framed as a celebration of new beginnings. Diane called Sarah within an hour of receiving hers, her voice bright with a warmth that made Sarah's skin crawl now that she understood exactly what it was capable of concealing. Oh, Sarah, this is wonderful, truly. Monica and I wouldn't miss it for anything. I know you wouldn't, Sarah said, and meant it in a way Diane could never have understood. We're so looking forward to having you both there. Monica texted separately, an hour after that. A single line dressed up in enough enthusiasm to look sincere to anyone who hadn't heard the recording of her laughing about ruining Sarah's engagement 6 weeks earlier. Can't wait, this is going to be such a beautiful night. Sarah looked at the message for a long moment, then set the phone face down on the counter. She has no idea, she said quietly, does she? None, Mark said, coming up behind her, resting his chin lightly on the top of her head. Neither of them do. Outside the window, the city was already lit gold with early evening, and somewhere across town, in an apartment Sarah no longer needed to enter, her stepmother and stepsister were almost certainly celebrating an invitation to what they believed was the beginning of Sarah's public undoing. They had no idea it was theirs. The ballroom glittered the way only money and careful design could make a room glitter. Floor-to-ceiling windows holding the entire skyline like a piece of jewelry, round tables dressed in white and gold, a string quartet working through something warm and unhurried near the bar. 240 guests moved through the space in the particular choreography of people who knew exactly how important they were to each other. Sarah stood near the entrance in a dress the color of champagne, greeting people whose names she'd rehearsed for weeks, feeling the strange, suspended calm of someone standing at the top of a very tall building, moments before a controlled demolition. Diane arrived at 7:40 in silver radiant, already working the room before her coat was fully off. Monica came in behind her in blush pink, a color Sarah suspected had been chosen deliberately to read as innocent under the ballroom lights. Sarah, Diane pulled her into an embrace that smelled like gardenia and old resentment. You look stunning, truly. This is everything I hoped it would be. I'm so glad, Sarah said, and smiled with her whole face and felt nothing at all. Monica hugged her next, quick and light, her eyes already scanning the room for Mark, for his parents, for the particular cluster of important people she'd spent months trying to charm on Sarah's behalf and against her in the same breath. This venue, Monica said, is unreal. You did so well." "We did," Sarah said, "Mark and I." If Monica caught the correction, she didn't show it. She never did. That had always been her gift, moving through a room untouched by anything that might have humbled a lesser performer. Dinner passed in a blur of toasts and easy conversation. Alina seated 2 chairs down, warm and attentive in a way that made Sarah's chest ache with something like gratitude. Mark's father telling a story about the warehouse where the company had started that made the whole table laugh. Diane laughed loudest of all, radiant, victorious, utterly unaware that every word out of her mouth tonight was being spoken in the last hour of her social credibility. At 9:15, the lights dimmed by design, the quartet fell silent, and Mark rose from his seat, tapping a glass that didn't need tapping because the room had already turned toward him the way rooms turn toward the people who own them. He crossed to the small stage at the front, took the microphone from its stand, and looked out over 240 faces with an expression Sarah had only seen once before, the night he'd watched the drugging footage for the first time, calm laid thin over something much colder underneath. "Thank you all for being here," Mark began, and his voice carried easily, warm, unhurried, exactly the voice he used to open every important meeting of his career. "Sarah and I have been engaged for 8 months now, and in that time, I've learned something about her I want to share with all of you tonight." He paused, let the silence stretch, comfortable, expectant. Diane leaned toward Monica and whispered something that made them both smile. "I've learned that she is the most patient person I have ever met," Mark continued. "Not patient in the way people usually mean that word. Patient the way you have to be when you've spent your whole life being underestimated by the people who were supposed to protect you." The smile on Diane's face held, barely. "Tonight," Mark said, "is meant to be about transparency, about starting a marriage with nothing hidden between the people who claim to love us." He glanced toward the back of the room, toward Terrence, standing unremarkable by the sound booth with his hand resting near a laptop. "So I want to show you something, a tribute of sorts, to the people who have shaped this relationship." The massive LED wall behind him flickered to life. For 3 seconds it was nothing, a black screen, a held breath. Then the footage began. The kitchen counter, the 2 wine glasses, Monica's back angled just slightly, just long enough toward the glass that wasn't hers, the small white tablet dissolving. A sound moved through the room like weather, a collective inhale, 240 people leaning forward at once, uncertain what they were watching, and then, in the space of a single frozen frame as Mark paused the footage, absolutely certain. "That," Mark said, into a silence so complete Sarah could hear her own heartbeat, "is my future sister-in-law drugging my drink 4 months ago while my fiancé was 3 states away, unaware any of this was happening." Monica's glass slipped from her fingers and shattered against the floor, an obscenely loud sound in a room that had gone otherwise silent. Mark pressed play again. The audio came through the ballroom sound system, crisp, unmistakable, Monica's own voice, giddy and unguarded. "God, she has no idea. She's going to come home and everything's just going to feel a little off and she's going to think it's her. That's the best part, she'll think it's her." Someone near the back said quietly, "Oh my God." The footage cut seamlessly to a second clip, Diane's voice this time, recorded weeks later at a lunch Sarah had never known was under any kind of watch at all, coaching Monica through the language of a rumor to spread to Alina, rehearsing the exact phrasing of a lie about Sarah's difficult relationship with money, laughing softly at how easily Alina had believed the first one. Alina's hand went to her mouth. She didn't make a sound. She didn't need to, her face did all the work. Diane had gone the color of the tablecloth. She was on her feet now, though Sarah couldn't remember seeing her rise, one hand gripping the back of her chair, mouth opening and closing without producing anything the room could use. Monica hadn't moved at all. She stood frozen beside her shattered glass blush pink dress, every eye in the ballroom fixed on her with an expression she had clearly never once, in 26 years, been forced to witness aimed at herself. Not envy, not admiration, not the careful social deference she'd spent her whole life curating. Disgust. Mark set the microphone down gently on the stand. Not a man finished with fury, but a man who had never needed to raise his voice to make a point land. He stepped down from the stage, crossed the frozen ballroom floor and stopped a few feet from Monica and Diane, close enough that his voice, quiet now, still carried in the dead silence. "Leave," he said, "before I call the police myself." Nobody in the room moved to soften it. Nobody offered Diane or Monica a hand, a word, an exit that preserved even a shred of the dignity they had walked in with an hour earlier. Sarah rose slowly from her seat. 240 faces turned toward her instead, waiting. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, the silence in the room felt like it belonged to her. Sarah walked to the front of the room, past tables of people who had known her for years and people who had met her only tonight, and stopped a few feet from the two women who had spent a decade teaching her to doubt her own memory. "I'm not going to raise my voice," she said, and her voice, when it came, was steady in a way that surprised even her. "I don't need to. You've never once in 10 years needed volume to hurt me. A comment at dinner, a story told to the right person at the right time, a photo sent somewhere it could do the most damage. You built an entire language out of things you could deny afterward." Diane's mouth opened. Sarah didn't stop. "I used to think I was imagining it," she continued. "That's the part I think you were counting on most. Not that people would believe your version over mine, though you worked hard for that too, but that I would start to believe it myself. That I'd spend so long being told I was too sensitive, too paranoid, too dramatic, that I'd stop trusting what I actually saw with my own eyes." Her gaze moved to Monica, who still hadn't spoken, who stood in the wreckage of her shattered glass like she'd forgotten how her own legs worked. "You didn't just try to end my engagement. You tried to drug the man I love and let me come home to a version of my life you'd rewritten while I was gone. You wanted me to think I'd lost him. You wanted me to think it was my fault." "Sarah," Diane's voice cracked finally, the practiced warmth gone, nothing underneath it but panic. "You don't understand, it wasn't." "I understand completely," Sarah said. "That's the difference between tonight and every other night for the last 10 years. Tonight, I finally have proof of what I understand." Elena rose from the table then, composed, quiet, devastating in the way only someone who rarely raised her voice could be devastating. She crossed to stand beside Sarah, close enough that the gesture read to every person in that ballroom as exactly what it was. "I owe you an apology," Elena said to Sarah, not loudly but clearly, the words carrying into every corner of the silent room. "I let a stranger's voice into my head about a woman I should have simply asked directly and trusted." She turned to Diane. "You will not be welcome in my home again, either of you. And you should expect to hear from our attorneys about what was done to my son." Mark's father stood next, saying nothing at all, which somehow landed harder than any speech could have. He simply walked to stand on Sarah's other side. Diane looked around the ballroom at faces that had, an hour ago, admired her, envied her poise, asked after her opinion on the seating chart, and found nowhere left to land. Nobody offered her an exit line. Nobody offered Monica one either. Security, quiet and efficient, appeared at the edge of the room, the kind of discreet presence that expensive venues kept on hand for exactly this contingency. Though Sarah suspected Mark had made a call earlier that evening she hadn't asked about. Diane left first, her silver dress no longer catching the light the way it had at 7:40, moving through a room that parted around her like she carried something contagious. Monica followed a few steps behind, and for one moment passing Sarah, she opened her mouth as if she might say something, an apology, an excuse, a final performance, and then closed it again, because there was, for the first time in her life, genuinely nothing left to say that the room would believe. The ballroom doors closed behind them. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, somewhere near the back, a single person began to clap, and it caught, table by table, not celebratory exactly, but something closer to release, 240 people exhaling a tension they hadn't fully realized they'd been holding. Mark crossed the floor and took Sarah's hand. "You didn't have to do the speech," he said quietly, just for her. "I would have understood if you'd wanted to just let the footage speak." "I needed them to hear it in my voice," Sarah said. "Not just see it on a screen. I needed to say it myself once out loud in front of everyone who's ever doubted me." She looked up at him, and something in her chest that had been clenched for 10 years finally, fully released. "I think I just did." The quartet began playing again, tentative at first, then warmer, and somewhere behind them Elena was already directing the catering staff to bring out the champagne that had been waiting, untouched, for the toast that would now mean something entirely different than the one written on the program. Later, much later, when the guests had thinned to close friends and family and the night had softened into something almost tender, Mark found Sarah standing alone by the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city spread out gold and endless beneath them. "Regrets?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "None," she said. "For the first time in my adult life, none at all." She leaned into him, and he wrapped an arm around her without hesitation, without calculation, the way he'd done everything for her since the night he chose to believe her over the wine in his own glass. "You gave me something tonight I didn't know I still needed." "What's that?" "Proof that I was never the problem." She turned to look at him fully, the last of the ballroom lights catching gold in her eyes. "You gave me my own life back." Outside, the city kept turning, indifferent and enormous. And inside, in a ballroom finally emptied of everyone who had ever tried to convince her she was less than she was, Sarah Whitfield stood in the arms of the one person who had simply, quietly, completely believed her. And for the first time in 10 years, she believed herself